Hey y'all, I'm Destiny.
And I'm April, and we're here in Dothan at the George Washington Carver Museum for another episode of The Craft.
Yes, we're so close to the end.
I know, it's been so fun.
So fun. So in today's episode, we have some painters. And what is our topic for today, April?
Our topic today is about American Brutality. So we asked our painters to create their artwork and explain what American Brutality means to them. So let's get into the episode of The Craft.
Hey, I'm Ray Ramsey. I'm a graphic designer in Dothan, Alabama.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
We're at the Carver Museum in downtown, where we're going to be talking about American Brutality on The Craft.
Hey, this is Amelia Farrell.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
And I'm headed to The Craft. The topic for today is American Brutality with painters and artists. So I'm looking forward to this exciting conversation and this great art.
What's up, family? This is Orange Scruggs.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
I'm an artist, and I'm about to do this episode of The Craft. We're shooting it at the Carver Museum. That's one of my favorite places to go. The subject of this episode is American Brutality. So they picked some artists to create a piece based on American Brutality. I'm one of the artists, and I'll explain what I painted later on in the show. So yeah, welcome to The Craft.
Bob your heads if you rockin' with the craft. Discussing serious topics, the stuff that make you laugh. Informational and necessary, we do it all. Writing our own stories, cause they always drop the ball. Exemplified talents, we control the way we look. This ain't a clickbait site, man, it's off the hook. So check it, this ain't the drama field, all about a dollar bill. This is black excellence, something that you gotta feel. Bob your heads if you're rockin' with the craft. Bob your heads if you're rockin' with the craft. Grab a seat, go ahead, pull up a chair. Oh yeah, it's the craft.
So hey guys, welcome to set.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hey.
Excited to be here. Okay, so how long have you been painting, and what mediums do you use?
I've been painting for about 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so art has been my life for a long time. And, the mediums I use are oil over acrylic. So I do acrylic base, and then I do my details in oil.
Okay, so you always use acrylic and oil? Or
Sometimes I use just acrylic. I use chalk, charcoal, several mediums I do.
What's your favorite medium?
I really don't have a favorite. I like mixed media. So.
Okay. Amelia, what about you?
Mixed media abstract artist.
Okay.
I use whatever I can get my hands on.
Paper.
Exactly.
Wood.
Gotta be creative.
Just everything.
Okay. And do you have a favorite?
No favorite.
No favorite, just whatever you get your hands on. Okay.
Are there any artists that inspire you or influence your artwork?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm pretty much inspired by modern design. So like a lot of mid-century modern architects and designers. So for me, I use mostly digital. So I'm a graphic designer, but I also do graphic art. I've done set design. My name is Raymond. I was named after my uncle, who was an artist. Wow. So I started out drawing, sketching, and all of that. Always loved human form, always loved balance and just lines and circles. I don't know. So it's influenced. I get influenced mostly from modern design.
Okay. That's pretty cool. What about you guys? What influences your artwork or your need to be creative?
Music for me is the biggest influence.
Okay.
So just a great playlist, and I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, one of my favorite artists is Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay.
I always looked at his books and drawings and sketches and inventions, and that influenced me to do art. And hip hop is a big influence on my paintings and some of my subject matter. So,
When you say hip hop, do you mean do you listen to the lyrics? Is it just the overall song? Explain that for us.
The lyrics, the whole elements of hip hop, like b-boying, graffiti, and also rap, it all and DJing, it all influenced my paintings. In the beginning, I started with graffiti, and then I moved into more expressive art for societal issues and what's going on in the community.
So when you are creating artwork, whatever it may be, do you use that as a way to express how you're feeling about what's going on in society ever, or just whenever you're inspired?
Whenever I'm inspired.
Whenever you're inspired.
Yeah.
Everybody's never been inspired. What about you?
Yeah. For me, it is a form of expression. If there's something I want to say, if I notice things, it's kind of like I can sit down, I can design for hours. My son was sad, something small, he couldn't go to a sleepover with his sister and her friends, and so he doesn't understand the whole boy girl thing.
Right.
And so I told him, I said, he's really into weather and he's into superheroes and all that. So I just decided to have some fun. So I painted him a little beard on. He's 7, so I painted a beard on his face, and he's having fun. And I took some pictures of him, and then as he went to sleep, I of course broke out the Photoshop and all of that, and created this whole canvas where basically when he woke up this morning, I showed him that he was a superhero. I said the weatherman's eyes are shining lights, so there's stuff all around him. So it's just it is a form of expression. It doesn't have to just be what I'm going through, but sometimes it's to help other people too.
Yeah.
So y'all see that often too, where you create something just because you had the idea, and then other people helps other people.
Yeah. I think, well, for me, it's very emotional.
Okay.
I don't always have a voice or words to express whatever it is that's going on with me or what's around me. So from color to strokes to the movement to the balance in, excuse me, whatever I'm working on is my voice. So it's not audible, but it's the voice that I have that kind of allows me to express. So when my dad passed, I didn't really know how to function or kind of like, shut down. So it took me like 4 years to finally talk about it. So I did a memorial piece for my mom. It's called The Last Day of My First Love. And so from, the blacks and the blues and the reds and the yellows that are in it, just kind of gave me the voice to express, dealing with the whole death thing of my dad.
So would you guys say being an artist is your calling?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
I would too.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it finds its way into whatever you're doing. Some people, they try to be creative, and when you're trying, it's just people can feel that. But when you truly are an artist, it will show up in everything you do. There'll always be something that makes people think or makes people feel, what you want them to think and feel. So.
Well, you can't come to the craft without showing us your piece.
Right. I think I'm ready to look at some
Exactly. All right, guys, let's go take a look at some pieces. So, tell us a little bit about your painting. Yeah.
Okay. I put a lot of hours in this. So this is my interpretation of American Brutality. The subject in the front is America. Not the country, the corporation, the system that keeps us in this, kind of funk that we live in on a daily basis. So I painted him as he's getting ready for his day. He's kind of tightening up his tie, which is a noose. And he's just like, I'm about to have a great day and like mess up people's lives.
Yeah.
So on the conveyor belt, we have different things that like corrupt us.
Right. Yeah.
So we got dirty drinking water, Flint, and we have syringes, which is like the pharmaceuticals and the poisoning of our babies, like with certain vaccines, not all of them, but some. We have the Constitution, which was not written to include us, in my opinion. That's just the way I feel about it.
Right. Yeah.
And the monetary system, which is, basically printing numbers on paper.
Right.
And of course, food with all the chemicals, and the food is slowly killing us. And again, we have like pills, the pharmaceuticals.
Very deep.
Yeah. And so, as he's tightening his noose, it's putting pressure on not only black people, just the whole country as a whole. But I just happen to paint that subject as a person of color. So, and you can see little eyes in the background. kind of like
scary.
they'll be next.
Scary.
Yeah, they'll be next. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on this.
And so I see you painted this right here.
Yeah, his nail.
Yeah, so it's kind of just a subliminal message. Like it's the flag. I didn't want to paint the flag big, so we have the red, white, and blue, and it's kind of like the blood of the people kind of dripping off his pinky, like like it's nothing. So.
This is very nice.
It is. Says a lot.
It does. It's your own definition of what you believe
American brutality is.
Yeah, American brutality is not just for black people. It's for everybody, poor people.
Yeah.
And people who are uneducated to what's going on with the system. It was created to keep you in a certain, box.
That's amazing. You have a title for it?
American Brutality.
Yeah. Right. Okay. It's amazing. It is. Wow. All right. I think it's time to check out the next painting too. All right, guys. You want to go see your painting? Let's go. All right.
This is entitled "What About the Others?" The topic is American brutality, but for me, it's hard to voice that. So, just with that topic, I feel like that most people always see, when they say brutality, they always think black and white. But what about the others? What about all the other races? What about all the other issues? Even with slavery, what about the ones who were left behind? What about the lives that were ruined by their family, their loved ones, their children being taken away? What happened to them? Nobody ever tells their stories. So for me, that's where brutality began, is when something was taken away that was life to them. So that's my take on it.
It's actually really creative how you came together. Like, that's really nice.
Black and white, yeah. I love that.
I like the colors, like the variety of colors.
Yeah. And how it's not in your face, it's just off to the side. So it pulls in that what about the others. I like that.
So black and white takes it.
So
the
that's
whole,
what
exactly. That's
takes
the
up
meaning
both
behind
of the conversation a lot of the times when you think of brutality, like she said. So yeah, these are awesome. I love it.
Yes.
So let's go talk about some
stuff. Let's go.
Let's go.
Those paintings were amazing.
Yes,
they were very detailed.
So detailed and just spoke so many different things. April's gonna check in with Hope. All right, guys.
I'll see you later.
All right, bye.
See you later.
So while April checks in with Hope, I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about American brutality. So in your paintings, they encompass a lot. And we know that American brutality, like O said, it's not just one specific thing. But when you think of American brutality, what is something that like you just automatically, first thing that comes in your head? Anybody? Like the first thing that you just think about that touches you?
I just think about the way this country was built, like over all that time. These things were like strategically put together to like make sure they have a good position in this country, and everybody else just kind of fits in where they can, and it makes it tough on like people like me and people who don't have like necessarily not rich, and they try to struggle to survive in this country while the others just benefit from all the rules that they made the laws, but then they're not following the principles. So that's what it just eats me up inside.
One thing when I was doing my research before the shoot today is when people think of the word brutality, we automatically sometimes go to police brutality. But when I Googled American brutality, it was interesting that Google brought up different wars. And I don't think a lot as Americans, we think about, we have our freedoms, which is amazing to some people, but we are being brutal to other countries. And so it's like, that's a part of American brutality. We don't want to think about that because it doesn't make us feel good.
Right.
But a lot of people don't think that is an aspect of brutality, but it is.
Yeah, that's actually something I was thinking about too. Because if you go outside of the States, or, the world is much closer now through the internet and various other forms of medium. And so when you talk to other people, they're kind of like you see two things happening. One, they either want to be like Americans, or you'll see that they really don't like Americans. And
all.
sometimes you see a weird combination of both.
Yeah.
They want to be like Americans as far as culture goes. And of course, we know a lot of our culture we've gotten from various places.
Yes.
You know, we kind of take what we believe is the best, repackage it, and present it to the rest of the world like this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense of narcissism as a nation that we can be very much deaf to the cries of the rest of the world, and then we choose what to care about. You know, and what's sad is that a lot of times you'll see with certain charities, I mean, we do have a lot of great charities in America. We have a lot of good things that are taking place, and even exporting a lot of good things. But sometimes we choose the things that will bring us more money.
Make us feel good.
Yeah, make us, and even sometimes to appease our conscience as a nation. You know, and so, you know, I when I think of brutality, I do think about, you know, just the disregard for life.
Yes.
The disregard for not just physical life, but the quality of life, that every human being matters.
Yes.
You know, and so it's easy to flip the channel when I see someone else suffering and not realizing that that person is a human life just like me. And there are things that they have zero access to. And I could skip a hamburger and make their life better, but you know what I mean? It's like our conscience is dead or something.
Yeah, like we become desensitized.
Yeah, and once that's that way, it's easy to...
to just let it roll off the shoulders. And I think with O's painting, and he brought up the dirty water aspect of it, there's people in America that don't even know about Flint, Michigan. And that aspect of, like, in 2019, there are people who don't have access to water and food. And we get the broad scream of things like, oh, yeah, there's homeless people and we're helping in the food banks. But it's a lot bigger than I think us as Americans sometimes, like you said, especially if we're not living in that bubble, if it doesn't affect me personally, or I'm not seeing it every day, it doesn't exist. And I just think it's sad in the sense of when you just think of American brutality, there's so many different pieces to it.
I don't want to do all talking, but I will mention this. I was in the Virgin Islands recently, a few months back, and one thing that I saw was that they're still recovering from those hurricanes that came through. And it was really, really bad. And they've been having issues with a certain government organization in terms of corruption. And it doesn't mean that the agency itself is corrupted. There are people who work for them who have kind of gone in and capitalized on them. So, for example, let's say that they need their roof repaired. Now, you know, it's different down there. Everything's built with concrete and all that. So they'll go in and the middle person, the contractor, will jack the price up and do all these things. And to get money from the government and to get money from the person. And then what you have is people going in saying, well, hey, it'll cost, let me just throw a number out, it'll cost $100,000 to fix the roof on your whole house, right? And it'll take like a year to fix it. So instead, I will give you much less than what your house is worth, but I just move into your house now. And at least you have some money to start over. And so they're just taking people's homes. But one of the things that stood out to me is that the media really covered Puerto Rico a lot. And I mean, a whole lot, and all the devastation and stuff that was happening. And it almost made you think that people, you know, black people, that all the other island nations around were good. And they weren't. They were still without power. And so it made me start to wonder, was the media coverage of that really about caring, or was it about a political agenda because of what we're doing with Mexico? And most people don't know the difference between one Spanish-speaking place and another. Was it kind of a PR thing? So I don't know, just little things I was thinking about.
And with the other, you said other, I mean, I want to ask you, so in your painting specifically, I love how you depicted the black and white, because that takes up a big portion of the conversation when we think of American brutality. But when the other aspect of it, can you let me know, when you were creating your painting and you put the different colors and the different mediums of the other, what are you speaking of? What were you thinking of specifically? Because you said you couldn't vocalize it.
Well, first, the way that those smaller pieces came about it's what was left over from the bigger tube of paint. So it was like the neglected part. So once you open the cap and the dry paint is there, it's just like the little, you usually throw it away. So I just put them in a separate container by themselves, which made me think about my first thought was when slavery came, because there's actually another piece that goes with that, that actually sold to Miss Rams, Freeman. Precious got that one, and it's called Passport Needed. It's totally different. It's really cool though. But I was just thinking about when the slaves were taken from their country. What about who was left there? Like that was brutal for them, even though they weren't physically attacked. Even though all of them weren't physically attacked, the brutality of someone I birthed, someone who birthed me, my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad, my children, was taken away from what the only thing that they ever knew. So those pieces that are in the corner were the ones who were left behind, the ones that you don't talk about, the other cultures you don't talk about, the Jewish people you don't talk about, the Hispanics, Mexicans, those people you don't talk about, the ones who were taken to, made to go to war, those people that you don't talk about. It's not just black and white. It's never been about just black and white. It's just what we see, because that's just what we're familiar with. Yes.
Yeah. Anybody else want to touch on that?
Well, I would say that that's, I'm glad that we changed. We were going to do police brutality, but we said American brutality, because it really opens up your eyes to see that all of this stuff is going on in this country, and it's not just a black and white thing. It's the whole land mass thing. It's the whole country. So it really just gives you a different perspective and allows you to be more expressive about things.
So speaking of land, I just got direction to ask this question. Speaking of land, we know right now one of the big topics, and all of the topics we have going on politically, we have a border wall that's being built. So is that a form of American brutality? Would we say, would we agree? Would we disagree? What is the thoughts on that? Because we're building a wall, basically, essentially, and keeping people out. So what are our thoughts?
I have some thoughts on that. I'll wait though.
Yeah, I think it's wrong, because most of the area from Mexico all the way to Texas was Mexico, and so I mean, how could you block a certain race out or try to keep them out when you did the same thing, and you came in this country as an immigrant, and you were able to pursue your dreams and goals and build houses and develop land, and then once you get it established for yourself, you don't want nobody else to
have it.
Right. So
I feel like that just shows that there's something corrupt about the American dream.
Yes.
Because you're right. I mean, Mexico, it went into Texas. It went into, New Mexico. Like you had up into California. And in history, the Americans and the Europeans, it wasn't even American. The Europeans that came in and kind of infiltrated, came in and actually used those people to help to build that place up, and then force them down south. So all of when you think in terms of South America, it's all America. So, but again, it shows how self-centered we as citizens of the United States can be sometimes, to think that we are the only true Americans. And again, people aren't just coming here because they want to take our jobs. No, they're coming here because they want a better life. And that is, like I said, it has been corrupted because the Europeans that came here came because they wanted a better life. They wanted to be able to worship God the way they wanted to. They wanted to be able to be free from certain taxation without representation, etc. And we teach it in our schools. We grow up learning it, but it's like at some point, when does that connect with where we are now? And so we are doing to other people what the Native Americans should have done to the Europeans that came to be settlers and to colonize here. They should have literally pushed them out if that's what it was going to be. So I just kind of feel like that is another incident of our brutality. I do believe it's wise to have criteria when people come in. But again, if you think back, they didn't
Start
have that
that.
to let people come here, especially the Native Americans. They believed the earth belonged to everyone.
Yep.
And we just don't have that same humility now.
Yeah, not at all. Next, we're going to check out Ray's depiction of American brutality. So let's check out Ray's.
All right, so in keeping with the theme American brutality, in our discussion we talked about how one of the things that I know that was on my mind was how greed is the root of a lot of our brutality and what makes us fight against each other for power, for money, and all of those things. So I decided to do a piece called The Balance of Power. And so in The Balance of Power, I've composited several images together to form an abstract work against a background that's kind of got New York in the background. So that's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm going to explain all the different elements and how they come together so that you get an idea of what it actually means. So again, I started with this sculpture of Lady Justice. So if you're familiar with Lady Justice, you know that she wears a blindfold and to show that she's impartial to whoever's there to be judged, and also carries scales in her hand. And so I didn't want to use anything with her hands because I had another idea for her hands that I wanted to use. So what I did was I put a bar over her eyes to symbolize the scales that would otherwise be in her hand. So what I did was I put Lady Justice up here with the blindfolds, which is typical, but I put the bar, which represented the scales, more to one side to represent an inequality in the justice system. And so what I did was I moved it over to one side, and then I have blood coming down on the side where they're getting the short end of the stick, so to speak, or the side of inequality. So there's blood coming down to represent the bloodshed of the people who have been on the wrong side of the justice system in the United States. And also I put a little blood on the other side, and it just says that there's been bloodshed on both sides. People who are on the side of the privileged and those who are not privileged have also suffered as a result of inequality. And also I've got a noose on the side over here to represent the power of life and death that's on the side of those who are more privileged in the United States. I have here the word abomination, and that's because in the Bible, the book of Proverbs, it's mentioned twice, but particularly I want to say it's Proverbs 11 verse 1. It actually says that dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord. And so I have the word abomination and the word nation highlighted in that. And so of course this represents not just the justice system within the United States, but it represents the United States, the way we see justice around the world. And we have kind of more power than other nations, a lot of other nations. And so, you know, it's kind of a question of how we are seeing ourselves, and are we seeing the bloodshed we're even causing other people. So that's starting with Lady Justice. And I'll jump over here to this fist that's up. And if you notice, the fist kind of looks like it's connected, where the body of Lady Justice could be behind here. And this fist, of course, is covered in blood and just represents power and might, you know, around the world. And so the question is, in the word innocent with a question mark is here. And that's just asking the question, does the end justify the means? How we obtain power around the world, the way that we got that power, was it right? And as you go further into the piece, I'll explain more what I mean by that. So as you go down, you're going to see a couple of things. Number one, you see a man who's obviously impoverished. And so what I did was I took an image of a man who is standing against a wall that's concrete, and the ground is obviously concrete or some type of brick. And so I like this image. What I did was I took out everything except for 2 squares, and I had a reason for that because he's bent over, and as you see, there's this concrete wall right here, and is where his mind is, and it's kind of just to represent being kind of stuck, and also around where his feet are, which kind of again represents how the poor or those who are impoverished are kind of have like a weight to their feet where they can't rise. And so over here to the right, I've got George Washington from the $1 bill, and I've got the British flag superimposed over him. And one of the stripes of the British flag, I have it going over the word great minds. And I'll talk about that here in a second. And so what I have here is, what does this represent? This represents how the early fathers of the United States, how they came over here for various purposes. Some came because of the desire for religious freedom, but many that revolted against the British did so because of taxation without representation. So ultimately, it was about money. Right? And so we would think, as Americans especially, no one likes to feel a sense of guilt or even a sense that our motives aren't pure. And I'm not saying that their motives were pure, but what I am saying is that at the end of the day, it was about money. And so the reason why the British flag is superimposed over them is because they came from that nation. And so in coming from that nation, the same mindset applied, which I'll talk about. But this stripe goes across the word great minds, and great minds is in green because of the phrase great minds think alike. And of course, the people who were able to overthrow the British, who were able to build this nation, they were great people. I mean, they were people who had a great mindset. They had a free mindset. And so, but they thought alike. They thought like the British. They thought like people who were conquerors or colonizers in the way that they obtained this land that we, have turned into the United States of America. And so I have this stripe going through, and of course the red represents violence. And so the red goes through this impoverished man, and I have the word disregard upside down. And the word disregard is upside down as to represent how the poor are discarded so easily in this nation. And so it goes through him, and you see no exit wound, so there's no real proof of the poor. You have to almost interview a person on the street to ask them like their background, where do you come from? Once you are not working within the system, now there's no proof of you even existing. And so that's to represent that, and it's a green bullet going through, and of course that green represents greed. Okay, so here, if you were to zoom in closely, you'll see the word ouch. He's just saying kind of like, man, this whole process is hurting me, but it's etched out in green and red, and that's just representing violence and greed together. Okay, so now I'll move down this direction. If you look here, there's an image in the background of a tree with a root system. So what you'll see here is an ear of corn, but it's a red ear of corn. And you'll see cotton that's in front of it. And I did this for a reason, and I could have really extended this stripe down, but I didn't want to do that. So essentially, this red has to do with the early fathers. He doesn't represent. It's not saying George Washington did any of this himself. It just represents those early fathers and how they obtained this land. Of course, if you've had any kind of history class, you know that when the settlers came here, they came with what appeared to be pure motives, and they might have been, and they were taught by the Native Americans how to work this land, how to live on this land, but they had a different mindset about land and territory than they did. So what began as a harmonious relationship and them learning the land and learning how to function somehow ends hundreds of years later. These Native Americans, many of them are on reservations. They're second and third and fourth class citizens in the land that actually belonged to them as a birthright. And how did that happen? It happened through war. It happened through that same mindset that those Europeans had, which was to conquer them. So they didn't expect when they were helping them, I'm sure, that they were going to end up, they were helping people who would become their enemies simply through envy and greed to possess what they had. And so that's why this ear of corn is covered in red. It just represents the bloodshed and the violence that the Native Americans had to endure. But it's all the way in the back behind the cotton. So this land was taken from the Native Americans, and of course they were thrown a bone, which was, we'll give you a little land and we'll put you on reservations and stuff, and kind of give you some money here and there, but we're taking this land from you. They were pushed to the back, and then of course it was built on the backs of African slaves, and that's what the cotton represents. So and I put one ear of corn but multiple pieces of cotton. It just kind of represents, of course, the issues of African Americans have kind of gone to the forefront in this nation. It's just a lot has happened over the last couple of hundred years relating specifically to African slaves that were brought over here and the those who have come from them. And so that's kind of pushed ahead of the Native Americans, just kind of as far as important, but they're still back there to say, hey, let's not forget where it began in this nation. And so I'll come back over here. I have here on this block, greed is the root. So it's greed is the root. And I even have a cross section of more roots, just kind of larger, to say we ought to examine the root of what's going on in our nation. So what I have over here is the president And people can say what they want to say about the president, but I didn't want to efface him or do anything, because I still believe that you ought to respect the nation that you're in, even if you don't, if you have strong views for or against its leader at the time. So, but what I did want to do is show what he represented. Anyone who's kind of listened to his speeches, even those who have supported him, have said he's contradicted himself at times, or his views are very close-minded, which is why I took him and put him inside of a circle. The circle just kind of represents closed-mindedness, circular reasoning, and so I put him in there. And one of the phrases he liked to use a lot is the words fake news. So I have him saying fake news in red, because from that idea has come a lot of confusion, and as a result, a lot of violence. And so I have fake news a lot here in the background. But also I put a green bar over his eyes, and that just represents how greed has blinded the privileged in this nation. Those who are powerful, those who are rich, are blinded by their greed, and therefore violence almost easily comes from them. And so it goes over the word is to say that while greed is obviously the root of what's happened in this nation, in our American brutality, there are some who are benefiting from it, and so they will say greed is not the root. Okay, that's what they'll say. And so anyway, I've got that going on here. Down here I have the phrase all lives should matter. I have it again pushed back, and it's cut off, and it's just to say every time a people group raises up to say, hey, we ought to value human life, we ought to value humanity, it's always pushed to the background, and it's always cut short. It's never fully expressed, and doesn't always come with the result that we want, especially what we saw in the civil rights movement. So I'll go further down here, and you see a gentleman. Again, either he's just really sleepy, or he's probably impoverished, a poor gentleman who's laying on a bench. And so I put him down here, and I put him on a blanket that's a $1 bill. And it's just kind of to say, a $1 bill you might see on the ground, and you might pick it up, but I mean, ultimately it's kind of a $1 bill. You don't mind if it's wrinkled up, you don't care. And it's just, and I've got him with some blood on him, and over him is the word worthy. And it's just to say, again, people who at the bottom of this system, the question is, do they have any value? If you're not able to serve the system, do you have inherent value as a human being? Should this person still be considered worthy or worth anything? So that's why I have that there. And if you go further over here, I've got, some of these issues are kind of pushed back, and they're not necessarily, may not seem as important. I've got some bark from a tree, and it just represents environmental issues. And I've got this brick wall over here representing what we've got going on with Mexico right now concerning wanting to keep people out, and, which could be seen as an American brutality as well, kind of building a wall between us and other nations. And so finally, if you come all the way to the end, I'm going to jump to something at the top here actually before I do that. If you go back to the bar up here with Lady Justice, if you look closely, you'll see eyes superimposed over the bar. Those are the eyes of Benjamin Franklin from the $100 bill. And so it kind of almost looks like she is able to see. And that just kind of represented if you have money, if you have enough money, then maybe the justice system does see you and is impartial. So I'm going to go back down here to the bottom. And normally you'll do you do these little bars here to represent the color palette you use. But what I did was there's a song that in this song it says red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight, right? And it talks about, Jesus loves the little children of the world. And so what I did was I did this to say red and yellow, black, and instead of white it's green. And that's really not to that's not to say that people who are white are greedy. It's just to say that there's a privilege that's happened as a result of how Africans and those who are not white have been treated in the nation. And it's not to put any guilt on anybody, it's just to say that is actually history. And so it's red and yellow and black are actually all square, and then green is kind of longer. And so it's just to show advantage, and then of course it's surrounded in white. And so anyway, that is the piece that I've come up with to represent American brutality. It's not a piece necessarily about race, although race has been a big thing that we've kind of gone through in this nation. But it's just kind of a piece about how at the root of all the things that have taken place that have caused us to be to devalue human life, that I believe that the root of all of that is greed. And so yeah, that's my piece, the balance of power.
Ray, thank you for sharing with us your take on American brutality. And what do you hope that people who see your piece and our viewers get from it?
Well, I really hope that people will, change at a personal level.
Yeah.
Change is really hard until we see the value in it. And I know that we say that, you probably heard the saying that you'll change when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. So when we start to feel what others around us are feeling, and as it relates to American brutality and suffering, then I hate to say it, I hate for us to have to go through the same things, but when we start to feel what other people are feeling, then I think that we're going to begin to make changes that will impact other people's lives.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And just feeling, and I think it, like I said before, it comes with us living in our own bubbles, and we have to kind of widen our views and talk to people, having conversations like this and getting to know people and learning from their experience and what they experience and traveling, like you said. So we've seen some amazing pieces today. I'm just like in awe of the artistry that we have in this room. Any lasting pieces or quotes or anything you want to let our viewers know and you hope that people take from this episode?
Well, I guess if I had anything to say, it would be more so just I think that I was just here, April. She was talking about social media, and she was talking, and we were talking about how there's a pressure on you to have to say something, even if you have nothing to say. And I think that it speaks to the greed in our society and how we have this bottomless pit of consumption. And I'm not trying to take it another direction, but I think that is kind of a root of brutality. I think it was Jesus who said that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And it's not even to make it a religious thing, it was just a real thing.
Yeah.
When I was looking at Oren's painting, and he's showing the pharmaceutical, and he's showing all these things, and the guy getting ready for work, it all came back to greed.
Yeah.
What I have is not enough. I need mine and I need yours. I need my land and I need your land. I need my job and I need your job.
Yeah.
Every relationship, I need my relationship and I need your relationship. Yeah. And then anyone who kind of wants to be a part and have community now gets sucked into, here's the buy-in to that community. You have to buy in to this lifestyle of more.
Yeah.
And so I would just maybe encourage some people, it's hard to pull away completely because our whole society is based on greed.
Yeah.
But if we could unplug here and there, enough to, value the people around us and value our own time and even our own life, maybe that would help to diffuse some of that, which makes us want to blur the lines and push past to consume other people. Even social media is really powerful because it makes us want to, it was designed to play into our greed and to play into our desire to own other people. I want to captivate you. I want to you to follow me. Stop what you're doing. Don't focus on your life. Focus on my life. With this picture, I'll use sexuality. I'll use my words. I'll use whatever I have and push that out there so that you will stop what you're doing and valuing your life, and you will see me as a standard and value my life.
Yeah.
That's just something that I would encourage people maybe to unplug a little and to get off of the conveyor belt like you had in your painting and say, something's got to change. I can't change everybody else.
Yeah.
But maybe I can take some time and look around. I might realize, man, I have kids. I have, I have family, I have friends. I have all this stuff that I'm missing out on because I'm being a part of a system that it never ends.
Yeah.
So maybe unplug is what I would say.
Yeah. I would like to say to tell people to stop ignoring the obvious. The system that we live in, it starts with you, and you got to be more sensitive to people and their needs, and just be a kind human, because the world can't continue going on in this fashion. Because it's more than just America; it's the world, it's the universe. So we have to maintain that balance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys for tuning into another episode of The Craft. A heavier episode, but still very good and so very needed. Hope you guys enjoy, and hope you check back into The Craft. Bye, guys.